did today was I was teaching a historical knitting class off of an 1838 knitting pattern for Muffatees. I didn't go too much in the history of that, but it was more or less just getting people familiar with the terms that they would have used back then. The basic cast on and knitting and purling it's really a basic type of pattern and uses no fancy stitches or anything like that. Muffatees are actually fingerless gloves is what we would call them now, and that allowed the woman and even men, they wore the Muffatees. I'm not sure if they were called Muffatees for men. They wore them while it was the cold. It was to keep their hands warm, but their fingers were still left exposed so that they can do their handwork, whether it be any of their chores. Because if they had mittens, obviously it wouldn't, which they would have worn mittens back then, but they wouldn't have been able to do their handwork. And it dates back way before 1830s. We used knitting, wood knitting needles. Back then there would have been at least 3 types of cast-ons, because you have to have a foundation on one needle. And so you do the simple cast-on, a knitted cast-on, or a long-tail cast-on. Those would have been the popular ones back then. Nowadays you have a whole slew of options for cast-ons, but back then they would have been just simple cast-ons. Then what you would do is you build on top of that foundation of loops, and you would do the 2 basic stitches, which is knit and purl. That just builds off of the foundation cast-ons, and the fabric that you're knitting would keep going down as you go back and forth with rows and rows and rows. And then after you're done with it's a flat, what you're knitting is flat, and what you would do is you would take the 2 ends together and you would sew about 1 inch to 1.5 inches seam down here, and then you leave a space about 2 inches, and then you stitch the rest of it, and then that left a hole for the thumb, and then the top is all open for the fingers. I'm a process kind of person, but also a project person, but more of a process person. I enjoy from start to finish what the different steps are, because I'll do spinning and plying with yarn and that kind of stuff. Well, as far as the knitting part, my mom taught me when I was about 11 years old, and and that's all she taught me. She taught me the basic cast on and then purl. That was it. It wasn't until I'd say in my 40s where I really got back into knitting. Through all that time, I've always been a person who loved crafts, and I was big into the fiber art, and I still am. Anything to do with fabric, because I've done quilting, embroidery, sewing, and that kind of stuff. What really got me into the historical aspect of it was just being a part of events and art galleries. But then I would be demonstrating a lace making, which at that time, this is like mid to late 1980s, and I would be tatting, which is a form of knotted lace. And I did that for quite a few years, but I also got interested in other types of lace making, and I kept researching, gaining more knowledge through that, and I just kind of worked my way up to just doing quilting. I have a YouTube channel. It's the Haberdasher Fiber Arts. That's all one word, the Haberdasher Fiber Arts. And I have several instructional videos, some on tatting, actually quite a few on tatting, some on bobbin lace, just basically the beginning steps. Some are a little more advanced. I plan on getting more videos of the knitting, prompted by this class, getting more videos of the basics of the knitting and this particular 1838 pattern.